Welcome to this Peel Yourself Off to My Monday edition of Bury Your Bookie. I'm Jeff DeForrest, the man over there. I got to give him a lot of credit. Although he's celebrating addition by subtraction, his New York Giants, beloved New York Giants. Of course, the host of the Big Gunner podcast, the great Mike Jones with me. Now, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, we can't get enough of Mike. We're happy to have him on the program here today, in spite of the fact that one of the more hideous losses that was incurred once again. And you know what's funny, Mike? How are you, by the way? I'm glad to have you on the program here, and glad to see you're still supporting your Giants. But you were celebrating the dismissal of the Giants defensive coordinator, without whom, and I don't know that it's singularly his fault that they've had these fourth quarter collapses, but another double-digit fourth quarter collapse against the Detroit Lions yesterday, playing a brilliant ball game. Jameis Winston, who you said you would like to see in there, acquits himself very well. He does throw the one. Is there any timely interception? But this particularly untimely one, and somehow they pulled a Mike McDaniel. They decided not to go for a field goal late in the game on a 4th and goal from the 6. Don't complete that play. It turns out to be 3 rather large points. Count them, 1, 2, 3, because they end up getting tied up in the end of regulation by what was that? An 80-yard field goal. And eventually lose, giving up on the first play from scrimmage. A ridiculous run. Talk about defensive coordinator. I mean, that looked like the Gator flop on that play.
Yeah.
So, how you feeling? And you're celebrating the fact that they cut loose their defensive coordinator today.
Yeah, we got a cover yesterday, so it's probably the positive for the gambling aspect is that they covered the spread and ruined Dan Campbell's spread routine of what coming off after a loss, but he does get another victory, which is 14 straight now after a loss, which is one off the record. Hey, look, Jeff, this is the way it goes. You're going to sit there and tell me schmanalytics, all the stuff that you want to do. I listened to an argument this morning with Boomer Esiason on FAN Radio at WFAN in New York, was trying to convince the guy, his partner, that the Giants should have kicked the field goal. And there are so many people I argue with that say they got to go for the touchdown and go for the win. I don't buy it. I think it's harder to score a touchdown at the end of that game. I don't care about the 30 yards in field position. You can get to the 40-yard line and kick a 60-yard field goal now. So it's not like years back where, people are saying that you can kick the long field, so you're still getting in with a tie game. Jacksonville did the exact same thing and ended up in overtime yesterday. The Cowboys went for it on 4th and 1 on the 19-yard line early on in the game and went down 7-0 and were lucky to hold on. We have to point out that when you fail on these things, they have to actually come out there and you have to throw those numbers away. Because Boomer brought up the point that more 4th downs are not being made now because defenses are preparing that in pregame now because they know the teams are going for it on 4th down. It's not the analytics of times past. I don't want to see a player with his fist up signaling 4th down when you're not getting off the field until you get the ball back. Here's how the analytics go away, Jeff. New proposal, change the game of football. No more punting.
Wow.
No punting. You got to go for it on 4th and 1 on your own 9-yard line. If you took a punt out of the game, you watch how easy it would be to coach. Because now what you do is you just sit there and you're going for it all the time, and you wouldn't have these field position issues. You would go for it on 4th and 1 inside the 10. You might not. You kick the field goal on the 45, the long field goal on 4th and 15 because you're giving the ball up at the same spot anyway if you don't get it. So I say eliminate punting, change the game, get scores higher, turning over the ball in the first series of downs on your own 25 because you miss a 4th down and give the team the free 3 points and play on. I don't know. That's what I think it comes down to. The analytics come in. It's not even about the field goal. Jacksonville was more perplexing. They're up 3, 4th and 2 on a chip shot field goal with a minute to go in the game. Kick the field goal and play defense. Instead, they give the possession up at the 30. They go 25 yards. They're in overtime. Is it worth it to put your team at risk like that and go to overtime? I don't know. Again, I go back to again, I go back to this. You're gambling on this stuff. So if you have the over 48, you get a complete break yesterday in that game because they missed. They don't go for the field goal, but yet they get the tie. You should kick that field goal 27-21. If you're laying 3 in that game yesterday, Jeff, or 2.5, 3, like Jacksonville was laying, you're pissed off because the field goal's the right play and you go up 6. Now you have to score to beat you. Now you get the tie in overtime and you could lose. It's just from the gambling perspective, it changes the way I focus on gambling because you're not sure of these coaches' mistakes. And again, a lot of failure that we're not talking about. Dan Quinn should be getting ostracized for what he did in the game 2 weeks ago against Miami.
Yeah.
He gets a tie. And again, if he's 7-3, we're talking about him because he's 3-7. No one cares. So it's tanking within the tanking.
I don't know. I mean, you said you were watching a game at some soccer sports bar where everybody was in on a soccer game, but I think with this new idea of no punting, you might have been watching a game with Timothy Leary from the grave there. I mean, that is too radical of an idea for.
Oh, yeah, but what I'm saying is, it's a joke. I mean, I'm saying
I
it
understand.
jokingly.
Yeah,
But the point I'm making is some of these decisions that we as armchair quarterbacks and gamblers do that. What would happen if you took that out of the game? Because the flip.
Well, I would look at it this way, and I've seen it. We talked about this at great length with Mike McDaniel and I. And one of the beautiful things about being here in South Florida, where I just finished off a show, and we addressed it. The anatomy of a bye week is my favorite thing to have had throughout the history of talk radio, where you're thinking, okay, good. You have a lousy franchise that's been swimming in a sea of mediocrity forever. And you don't have to discuss whether McDaniel should be fired, whether Tua is a franchise quarterback, whether Stephen Ross should sell the team, what's the problem plaguing the offensive line. But you do see where, and Kafka did the same thing by not going for the field goal there. I think it's far more of a precarious position from whatever part of the field you're on. How many red zone? I don't even want to call it red zone failures because I really don't like the statistical stuff that comes out. It's not the same if you have a 1st and goal from the 1 as if you have a 4th and goal from the 19 because you happen to on 3rd down get inside the red zone. So that stat should be obliterated or at least have any number of quantifiers and qualifiers before you start taking that literally, which it seems like all announcers do. Oh, well, they're 3 for 10 in the red zone. It depends what part of the red zone you're in and how you got there and what the situation is. But once you get inside, how many times have we seen teams fail to score a touchdown once they're even inside the 5? 1st and goal from the 5, and they don't get in. They forget about kicking the field goal, whether it's early in the game or at the end of the ball game. And you're asking yourself, why is this lost on all head coaches? Where it's extremely difficult to push the ball into the end zone. If you're at the end of the game and you have time limitations and pressure, and also you're trailing by 6 and you have to have a touchdown, I think that's a huge advantage over giving the team and saying, "Oh, well, they have lousy field position." Because, like you said, I mean, look at Detroit comes back out of nowhere from the grave, ends up tying a game at the last second, and that was a weird one too. I mean, what kind of gyroscope was in that ball? Didn't that thing look like it was 5 yards to the right?
Yeah. And it came back. It was like, what kind of magnet's in that ball? That's true. I'd say there's a kicking ball with a magnet. Yeah, crazy. I don't. That was awful weird. That ball was hit so far right, and it came back in. And it's not like there was a lot of wind in that stadium.
I thought Scotty Scheffler hit that thing with a little bit. That was
amazing. Let me throw out something that I think people probably need to hear that I got one day on a phone. And this is a commonplace that people talk about all the time and why it happens. And I'm sure some people know this, but for those who don't. There was a playoff game. Buffalo was playing the Colts when Phil Rivers was playing. I was on the phone with a friend of mine whose son coached at Princeton. And I went off on the fact that the Colts went for 2, down 14, early in the 4th quarter to make it and why are they going for 2 here? Make it 7. If you get it, you're in the game, you can go for 2 for the win or do it. But teams weren't doing this back then. Because Phil Rivers, it was like 2020. And so as I sit down and listen to him, he says, I got someone here who'll explain it to you. So the coach gets on the phone with me and says, the reason why we go for 2 in those situations late in the 3rd quarter or 4th is that we know it's a 3-possession game. If we kick the extra point there, we go from 14 to 7. The next time we kick the extra point, we tie, and we need a field goal to win. We need 3 possessions before the opposing team gets any points. Meaning they're going to touch the ball 3 times and preventing them score. If they get any points, the system goes. So what we're trying to do here is make it a 1-possession game where an extra point wins it. That's the philosophy. Then he brought up that the 2-point make at 14 or higher is 52% make, where at 8 or 7, it's 41%. So he said the odds are more likely that you have now put forth the 2-point conversion at that point in the game. Hence, you got the extra point to win it. And I watched it happen. It happened a couple of times where it went. And then it also made me think, as a gambler, +7 doesn't mean that much anymore. Laying 7's worse. right? Because now if you get 6.5, the game could be 6 on this. And then sure enough, that next season, Tom Brady goes into Philadelphia. They're laying 6.5 at Philly. 6 minutes to go in the game. Philly scores to make 14, goes for 2. I'm like, why are they going for 2? And they cover the spread to make it 6. But that was the whole philosophy. So that's the first analytics I ever heard. And now we've just seen it be overwhelming with possessions, balls, yardages. When do you punt? I've come to grips where anything less than 4th and 5 inside the opponent's 50 to the 40, I go for it. So if I'm on the opposing team's 48-yard line, I have 4th and 5 at the 4th and 5, I'm going for it because I'm just like the punt to go in the end zone. I'm giving up 28 yards, the risk reward factor, all that. So that's why when I watch games, those are the things I'm going into. And as a gambler, I know with my bet what's about to happen.
I would say this. I mean, just looking at these situations at the end of games, I'd much rather be up to 6 points than the 3. And,
Yeah.
and really put the pressure on the other team to drive it all the way down the field. I don't care if they're starting at their own 40. It's still not going to be easy when they have limited time and few timeouts, if any. I just think you put yourself if you're asking, hey, where are you in a better position to win the game? Win it. Maybe if you're 1-10 and you're about to get fired anyway, you go ahead and try for it and say, hey, we may as well try to get our second win. But the way that they're playing this and we've seen it a few weeks in a row. We've seen it many teams. You mentioned Quinn, McDaniel, and now this happened with Kafka. It's usually going to come back and snake bite you. 2 out of 3 times the team has lost that took that strategy. So, and I'm sure the numbers are even more astounding and more lopsided than that if you analyzed every game and every time somebody went for it on a 4th and 3 from the 3-yard line. Missed, and then later on, the dynamic of the scoreboard changed.
Yeah.
I was going to say, living and dying by the hook was interesting yesterday. The Kansas City,
Yes.
my God, when Rice slid after he made that catch to put them in field goal range in overtime, I thought I'm a dead man laying 3 in a hook there with the Kansas City Chiefs, who had every opportunity. If Mahomes can make a play, they're down. I mean, this was an interesting dynamic. They're sitting there down 20-17. They drive the ball inside the 5-yard line. The Chiefs, with their prolific offense and their clutch performances over the years, failed to get in on the first 3 plays. Andy Reid, at that stage, had no choice, I don't think, but to go ahead and kick the field goal, put it in overtime. And then as a gambler, you're praying that you win the coin toss and take the ball. As they ended up having to kick the ball off, and Indy went through 4 straight possessions of 3 and outs with your man Daniel Jones, including their first possession in overtime. And now the Chiefs just needed a field goal to win the game, and you could see the way that was going to go. I mean, you're calling your bookie in a panic, and he's not answering the phone because you're saying, "Hey, I want to buy the hook. Let me buy the hook." Right. And that happened in a few games. The hook, I'm sure it was even more than this, but the ones I was following, University of Miami was laying 17 in a hook. They win by 17 in spite of doing the old Aaron Parsegian complaint thing where Jimmy was running up the score on Jerry Faust in that game, and Parsegian was screaming at Brent Musburger, who had the over and was loving every second of it. And Aaron's going, "This is a disgrace what this guy is doing." I don't know. Should the coach have come across the field and punched Mario Cristobal in the face for throwing a touchdown pass with like 25 seconds to go?
That I think was honestly, I think we're seeing this now. Those teams on the bubble are going to run up the score late. They're 27-17 or 34-17. Hey, that 3 against the 1 kind of looks a little bit better front, closer to a cover. Yeah, it's and then I saw Vanderbilt jump them, right? Vanderbilt was behind Miami. I didn't notice that Vanderbilt was ahead of Miami in the rankings, but I saw Vanderbilt jumped in front of Miami. I thought, so
everybody has Miami.
Every game matters now when you look at this. And what's really interesting, Jeff, in those rankings, there seemed to be a lot of movement. Like, what have you done for me that weekend? It jumps into play. There's teams jumping them, but yes, you're right.
Great if he went for 2 to cover the point spread.
Yeah,
got the call from upstairs there from Radakovich, rather the athletic director, and he said a lot of the boosters laid the 17.5. Mario come through for us. So that one ended up with a dagger in your back there with the hook, 17 instead of 17.5. Pittsburgh in their ball game also they were getting 2.5, I believe, and ended up losing by 3. Jacksonville, I think, was laying 2 or 2.5, and they ended up winning by 3. Dagger was a giant, a huge factor over the weekend in many games. All right, part of the theme of the NFL weekend was staying alive. It was Bee Gees time. Staying alive, because Kansas City managed to stay alive in that game. Detroit kind of kept its hopes of being a prominent playoff team alive by pulling that out of their ass against their Giants. New England kept their streak alive, 9 straight wins. That was another one where I have Cincinnati plus 7.5, and I'm praying that they get stopped and have to opt for a field goal. They end up winning a ball game by 6. They get a touchdown there. You know you're going to get tagged with a loss. The Jets, and they, I think they might have been, were they getting 13 or 13 and a hook?
13 and a half to start, end up going to 14, yes, end of 13.
Okay, so they covered a point spread, but they did manage to clinch a rather ignominious distinction in that they now will have 10 straight losing seasons. The New York Jets, they can't have a winning season this year. That seems almost impossible, doesn't it? Don't you have to fall into now it's 9-8? Or at least like a 9-7 season or an 8-8 at some point in time in a decade where you've been drafting highly, pretty inept. I mean, it goes all the way back to when Mike Tannenbaum buried the franchise and now is an advisor for virtually everybody on ESPN. He's telling the teams how to run their franchise. He literally buried more bodies than any heinous criminal has.
And I will say this, the strong picker of the Tennessee Titans to win the AFC South.
Oh, yeah.
He picked him at the beginning of the year, and I'm like, what's he looking at? Ward's going to be in that second coming. That's what he said. So, yeah, we don't want to listen to Mike Tannenbaum too often.
What do you make of Chicago, the Chicago Bears? They win, and they're sitting there 8-3. What do you think?
Yeah, first team with a winning record they beat this year was Pittsburgh without their quarterback.
Okay.
The schedule, the polar opposite. Again, I love bringing my team into it. The Giants have lost everybody with a winning record. The Bears haven't played anybody. We'll see what happens when they go to Green Bay. They play Detroit coming up. They got teams on their schedule that they're going to have to battle. They're going to prove it pretty soon inside the division that they'll have to play, who they'll play and win. I mean, they won with smoke and mirrors. We saw how bad, they won last 2 weeks ago at Minnesota, which I thought was a decent win, but Minnesota's played so bad. Then we see J.J. McCarthy is still regressing as Green Bay smokes them. I really thought one of my plays, I didn't give it to you, but I liked Minnesota yesterday, thinking that they can't be this bad. I saw what Green Bay offered the Giants. I thought we were very competitive, had a chance to win that game. I really thought 6.5 was a lot of points at Minnesota. J.J. McCarthy's a problem. Justin Jefferson's going to want out of there. And this is like, the Giants have always had their problems, or I get after the front office because I study them. Boy, if I'm a fan of Minnesota looking at their front office, you make a move to get McCarthy and let Daniel Jones and Sam Darnold out of the building. And you didn't solve it. At least when we let Daniel Jones out of the building, the first quarterback we got seems to give us a future. That is a problem up there. And then Mr. Kevin McConnell, the quarterback guru, thinks he can change everybody. He's this great quarterback coach like Brian Dable was. One more season like this, Kevin McConnell's going to find himself out in the street just for convincing the front office to make that decision with McCarthy. That's all I see.
It's funny because he showed some serious signs of life before his injury. And you thought, maybe they did make the right move. Meanwhile, Sam Darnold is, on the fringe of being an MVP candidate, which Seattle continues to win. And we saw Daniel Jones, by all rights, should have put the Colts on top, except for that late game collapse where they couldn't generate even one first down and preserve the victory.
Yeah, and how about 14 wins for Sam Darnold in Minnesota last year?
How about playing 55 with Notre Dame and you cover? How great was that against Syracuse?
Well, Notre Dame, how about, again, one of these great games that I love to talk about. Notre Dame's up 21-0 before they run their first offensive play.
That was great, yeah.
They block a punt for a touchdown and 2 interception returns. So it's like, when you're done there. That's the live bet of the year. Bet Syracuse minus 38.5. You're probably, if you can't touch the ball, you're up 21.
I mean, was it Alabama that had the 55-point spread? They covered by like half a point or something. That was pretty.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else in general that you saw, college and the pros, that you wanted to touch on before we get into some games?
Again, let's go back to this coaching. Dallas goes for it on 4th and 1 at the 19-yard line, goes down 7-0, is down 21, and comes back and wins that game. Their defense plays lights out. Why don't we stop using analytics for every play and realize, get a feel for your game? Philly didn't score a point since midway through the second quarter when they looked like they were doing. Dallas defense showed up. Say what you want about Jerry, and I watched the documentary, and I'm never a fan, but I kind of liked him a little bit more after the Netflix documentary. Did he make the mistake? Yeah, Green Bay's a lot better. They got their star, but meanwhile, they got picks, and they got Quentin Williams and Kenny Clark, and they got Overshawn back, who makes a big deal in that defense. You can't succumb. Injuries are a tough thing to overcome. Giants are struggling. If Neighbors and Scottaboo do not go down, I believe that Brian Dable still has his job. I believe we hold on to a couple of these games, and he's still coaching. So you got to look at injuries and see where they fall into where you are. And Dallas had a great linebacker that was out all year, and their defensive backfield was in shambles. They're getting a couple guys back. They're clearly playing much better. And that win yesterday could put them in a wild card. It could be a long shot to maybe take a hard look at them. They beat the Chiefs this week. I think you take a look at Dallas to make the playoffs. Seriously, if they win this game this week against Kansas City, I think that's a really good game that we're going to see on Thursday. Makes Thanksgiving becomes interesting now. You got Joe Burrow possibly coming back against Baltimore. I don't know what that numbers early on is, but Dallas, Kansas City, and you got Green Bay and Detroit, the division game that's going to be up. So you got three nice games, and then you got Philly and Chicago Friday. So you got a really good weekend of football that lined up for you that you caught a break on.
Yeah, and a lot of college football. Of course, the NFL week concludes tonight. I don't know if you have an opinion on this game. 49ers and the Panthers. Last line I see here was 7 and a hook. That might have changed since I'm looking at yesterday's news tomorrow in my New York Post here. But 49ers, I thought they were doing it with mirrors all along here. The Panthers have been another one of those sort of Jekyll and Hyde teams to try to gauge. Just when you start to believe in them, they fall backwards. And as you're ready to discount them completely, they come up with a win. So what do you think about that one?
Yeah, I like Carolina in this spot, but, I liked it a lot more than I'm watching what I'm seeing. You say there seems like the good teams are winning games like this. Just the coaching, Christian McCaffrey, you have the best player on the field there. Their defense is a lot of points. The overs 49.5 came down a point. I don't know why, because both teams scored. Bryce Young's playing a little better. They got a little vision there. I like the dog tonight, but I'm not in love with it. I like them getting 7.5 now. I was getting 6.5 and 7 earlier in the week. So the fact the line went up.
But in this game?
You said 7.5, I thought, right?
Oh yeah, 7. That's what I have here. But
yeah, so I'm saying I like it more if I saw 7.5, but I saw +7 yesterday.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, but I mean, just watching the game the way it's headed. A lot of these big spreads, I think teams don't care. All the double-digit favorites didn't cover yesterday. Baltimore, you got 14. The Giants went off at 14. They covered. The Tennessee gets a backdoor cover against Seattle. So all these little things you're seeing is that it's just hard to win, and just getting the W is way more important than that backdoor stuff that the gamblers always think about. It seems like the blowouts are the 3 and 4 point lines that get away from the team. Then you think you're in it. But when you're playing, you're struggling like this, playing for your football life, as I'd say, on these weak teams like the Jets, Giants, and all that. Sometimes these players get up and get going, and they'll play because they know that if they can't play on a 2-10 team, they may not be in the league next year. So you're playing for your livelihood. So I think that's why I like betting teams that seem to not have anything involved. Everybody says, well, they're not playing for something, but technically they are. They're playing for their job.
I would imagine if you did a study on this too, which I don't have the numbers in front of me, but we should dive into it, that if you took the double-digit dogs in every game in the NFL, possibly every season, and that was all you bet, it's kind of like that old standard. I don't know if this is held up in recent years, but at one time it was an annuity where if you bet against a defending Super Bowl champion every week the subsequent season against the point spread, you would come out on top if you did nothing else. That's if you were in this to win money and bury your bookie, Mike Jones. But we know that we're all fueled by self-sabotage, so we're betting every race, we're betting every game. There's a bunch of college basketball going on today. I guess we have the tournaments getting underway, so you have some nice matchups here. I don't know if you looked at the slate, but many people are very high on the Zags of Gonzaga. Playing 3.5, playing Alabama. And that's listed as a home game for Alabama, so I'm assuming it's actually on their home wood. Have you checked into any college basketball? Do you have any thoughts on
looking right now? I believe those will probably be a neutral site game.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
That 3.5. Alabama's supposed to be pretty. I mean, that's a first real test for Gonzaga like that they're gonna have. Is it early game? I see there's games are going off in the morning here. There's games all over the place.
It's probably over already, and we were.
Yeah, Rutgers got Tennessee in Las Vegas, so I'm going to say it might be out there. Seton Hall, NC State, Maui. So that's the Maui Invitational opens up. That might be where that game is. But no, where is that game? I'm scrolling down, but I don't see it. But anyway, yeah, I would like Alabama in that spot. I'm going to put you up to the test and take a shot and see what Gonzaga has playing against these teams with bigger budgets and can recruit kids and pay them off. So that's what that would be my thought on that game initially. Watching Alabama play Purdue, they got players. I saw a little bit of that game toward the end. Purdue got a win on the road at Alabama, but Gonzaga, we're gonna take a good look. We'll start digging in with the Maui games this week, so I'll start digging in the college and give you a little bit of what I see. I know Kansas struggling without Peterson, their top player, and everybody needs their ace. I'll go back to my one conversation with Jim Boeheim when we had a conversation in '99. It was at a tournament where I said to him, "Wouldn't you rather have a player for 4 years and the one and dones were just starting to come out?
Yes.
Than a great player for 1 year?" And he looked at me in the eyes and he said, "But having that one player that can do it all really catapults your team." And then fast forward a few years later, he grabs on to Carmelo Anthony and he gets his first title. So there was something to be said. I always thought that the way he played that zone, I said, but your zone is so hard to pick up for a freshman to pick up. I said, once you play that matchup zone, it's so good. I said, what can't you have a good player for 4 years and make them good? Make them that top-notch player that you make. He says, nothing like talent. He said that when you get a guy who can put it in the hole and do everything, tough to pass up. And that was I always remember that conversation because it was really why I understood how Coach K changed to that, getting those players that would spend 1 year. He was always keeping them 4 years, and around early 2000, you saw him make that switch. There's no Grant Hill that stays there all the time anymore for the 4 years. Bobby Hurley, Christian Laettner had that group, and now it was like push forward. He adapted. So, and then we all know what Calipari did.
Well, I mean, if anybody would be an example of continuing, perpetuating that idea, it would be Mark Few, right? Because Gonzaga players usually are not that elite guy that's going to get drafted after his freshman year, and he has these guys on the team usually for the distance, and they end up getting a lot of chemistry, and he's had a great success, even though he's never won championships with these guys. I don't want to ignore the ice. I know we were ice cold there a week ago, but you started to thaw with some hockey picks.
Right.
Are you at all?
Yeah, yesterday was, I saw the game I gave out was Vancouver. It didn't really look out good, but again, the Ducks get an overtime win Saturday night against the Knights, which I thought would be interesting. I'm having fun with it. It's competitive. Yesterday I had like the Wild. I gave that out and won, and Islanders were Kraken were on a back-to-back. The Islanders were sitting waiting for them. That was a good one. I got the Blue Jackets and the Caps tonight. Probably think the Caps would be the side there. And then as I scroll down, Panthers go into Nashville. The Predators laying 150 after getting beaten, which a game I really liked Saturday night was I loved Edmonton coming down on a back-to-back to play the Panthers. I thought they would show up after losing a tough game in Tampa because of that, the revenge factor of playing there twice. So I'm going to say losing to the Panthers in the Cup twice. I thought they would want to play that. So I kind of like Florida lay the 150 tonight. That would probably be my play of the day in Nashville.
All right, very good. I can't help but to leave on this note too, because and we've talked about it before. I'm perusing any number of channels yesterday where they have the hottest of babes that are giving out proposition bets, sides, and things like that. Mm-hmm. I can't help but think that I have never been in a sports book where any woman that looked like that was ever even present. I mean, usually if the guy's in the sports book making bets, I mean, occasionally you'll see the girlfriend hanging out. She's an attractive woman, but mostly the guys that you run into that are betting these games in sports books and all these prop bets looked like the guys that were in the crowd when I was at the Jamaica OTB, off-track betting parlor, many years ago when I was killing some time before I called the Hurricanes basketball game against St. John's, and where I had the religious epiphany that as I'm looking around the room, I'm thinking, this is the sickest bunch of low-life degenerates I've ever seen, and I'm one of them. But you rarely see these kind of, I mean, these babes that are dominating the handicapping positions these days. Look, it's great to look at, but I don't know. Did you find that maybe there might be a little credibility gap between the people that are actually involved in this sort of stuff and the people that are being selected by various media outlets to be the spokesman, trying to encourage you to go ahead and plunge with all of your money?
Well, let me just start off by saying the
When
first
was
time
the last time you saw a babe in a sports book?
I ran into this was a girl who's got a very good reputation out there, and well-known shows out there. Is called Kelly in Vegas, and she
Okay.
was our waitress at a nightclub, and very pretty girl and all that. And someone walked up and said, "You want to talk to her about sports?" And she knew her stuff.
Okay.
And I was like, "Okay, you can bet. You bet." She was a K-State grad, always had a good handle on what Kansas State football and basketball programs were doing. Would put out the bets. Very good picker. I watched her make bets and stuff. I talked about who she liked. She was very successful. She kind of knew her stuff. You could talk to her about players. She knew who players were. So it was it. But I will tell you this, that one of the biggest turn-ons I have with my wife was when she would go to the window in Vegas. It always kept me going. It got the blood flowing in all parts of the body. It's saying one of the biggest turn-ons when the wife would go up to that window and make a bet. I'm thinking, this is really hot. So I get the point. It was just.
It was more of a rarity, though, than it was the exception than the rule.
Yeah.
Where everybody that's recommending that you go ahead and take some prop bet, like that so-and-so is going to have less than 27.5 yards. It just happens to be stone gorgeous. So you just don't see that.
Very, very funny story you bring that up. So I'm sitting with way back in the 90s with a woman, and I'm in the book, and she looks at the prop bets. I'm going to make a bet. She goes, Michael Jordan's better than Karl Malone. He's going to have more points than Karl Malone. Walks right up, puts $50. How much is it good to put out? I said, put up $20. Fine. What's $20? You got 50? I give her $50. She goes up to the window, makes the bet, goes back with the ticket. 3 guys go behind me and see this, run up and put 4 dimes on Karl Malone to outscore Michael Jordan, and she won. Jordan outscored him. And yeah. And so I've seen that happen where guys were like, that's how he's doing it. We got to bet this. And we're going to bet the other side of the bet. And all I can remember is we're watching a little bit of the game, and Jordan's up to a 10-point lead, and they're staring at her. She walks out of the book.
Walks out, cash at 50. They're all
just like, so you'll hear it. I remember meeting a guy who used a philosophy. Another great story and I'll be quick. He made a bet for like 50 or 80,000, trying to get down anywhere he could on the Chicago Bears on a Thursday night game against Aaron Rodgers. He was listening to a guy talk about this is the easiest bet I ever make in the book. He's online waiting to go up to the window. They can't lose. Everything about this is Aaron Rodgers going to kill the Bears tonight. The guy going up there, he put $20 on the game. And the guy looked at his friend and said, I'm betting the Bears. I didn't know what I was betting. He put 50, 80,000 on the Bears. Just because the guy knew everything about football, bet it. It was a guaranteed lock, and his lock was worth $20. So he thought, what does this guy know? And this and that, and went opposite. And Aaron Rodgers won. And the guy and I have been friends. We talked about this. I met him on the phone that night, and we talked about it. We've been friends ever since. And that was how we got together over that particular situation where he was in Las Vegas in a book and wanted to get down anywhere he could for as much as he could, just on the basis of what someone said in front of him. So there's people that do this, to pick games.
Oh, yeah. Well, at the track, it's very common, right? Some guys betting $2,000, cold exactas, and you think, well, what does this guy know that I don't know? You're going to bet something else. And then you realize the guy hasn't cashed a ticket in the last 3 years. So yeah, people, you have to be careful what you're being influenced by. All right, we will talk to you again tomorrow. In fact, you're going to dominate nofilter.net tomorrow with this show, and then followed by the Big Gunner podcast, where you're all excited about the dismissal of the defensive coordinator who has blown 5 double-digit fourth quarter leagues so far.
Record.
This year, and what would the Giants' record be if they'd held on in 4 of those 5 games? Would be a whole different story and a different season. So, best of luck with that. We'll talk to you again tomorrow, Mike. And of course, a great week here. We'll be with you through Wednesday, and we'll take a look at the Thanksgiving Day games and some of the stuff that's coming up on Friday as well. So, for Mike Jones, I'm Jeff DeForrest. Thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in to this Peel Yourself Off the Mat Monday edition of Bury Your Bookie.